Why is it that we know our habits are bad, but we just cannot resist them? I'm going to break down the reasons why and how your bad habits are controlling your life and how to take back control. I'd been a binge drinker since I was about 17 years old, and I joined the military at 19. So we had about a 10-week break during basic training, so I had no alcohol. And then once we'd passed out, me and the boys would just go crazy every single Friday and Saturday, every weekend without a doubt, getting into trouble, getting into fights, meeting loads of women. And to be honest, it was fun. I had no repercussions from it whatsoever. I was waking up the next day feeling fresh. Me and the boys would catch up the next morning, piecing the night together. And it was fun. And to be honest, it was the only bad habit that I had. I was in the military rugby and boxing team. I would train every single day. But drinking was a weekly habit. And then in 2016, I left the military, not because of the drink, just because I wanted a fresh start. And I didn't know what to do, so I just flew over to the island of Ibiza to do a season working, which just turned into 3 or 4 months of hectic partying. And that's when weekly binge drinking turned into daily drink and drug taking. I started smoking weed with the boys. Never smoked weed before in my life, but that became a bit of a habit. It started off just being a chilled one in the apartment, and then it kind of became like an everyday kind of thing. And then once the season in Ibiza was over, I returned back to the UK, back to my parents' house for the first time in 5 or 6 years with all these new bad habits. And then I collected more bad habits as well. And now I've got no bad habits. When I turned 30, I became very aware of how the bad habits were making me feel, the direction that they were taking me in, and how I was going to end up if I carried on down this path. And at that point, I was smoking weed probably 3 to 5 times a week. I'd toned drinking down to about once a month, but it was a big blowout. And I was watching porn pretty much every single day. And my bad habits were starting to determine my future. And for most people at this point, which is kind of breaking point, this is when they'd start searching for professional help. But instead, I used these 5 steps, which I weren't aware were the 5 steps at the time. I only became aware when I actually looked back once I'd got rid of the bad habits and sort of retracked how I went from having about 10 different bad habits to 0. The first step is to acknowledge the bad habits. And I know 99% of people out there know full well what the bad habits are, but it is easy to become unaware because once a bad habit's firmly rooted into your day-to-day lifestyle, they just become unconscious and automatic. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and people will call it fate. And although I keep using the terms good or bad, I know that's not necessarily true because what some people see as good might not be what other people see as good. But the rule of thumb is a habit is determined by how it affects your life and your goals. A great way I've found to see if your habits are affecting your life positively is start to write your schedule from the moment you wake up. So it could look like this. Wake up, check your phone, make your bed, stretch, smoke a cigarette, have a shower, brush your teeth, floss, eat cereal for breakfast, have a coffee, meditate in the garden, read 10 pages of a book, smoke another cigarette, walk 10k steps, work, go to the gym, and then you go through the list and see which one of those habits negatively affects your life or your goals. I just read a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and the system that he uses is perfect. He uses the plus, the negative, and the neutral right next to the tasks to identify whether they're good or bad for his life and his goals. So now it might look like this. Wake up, neutral. Check phone, bad. Make bed, good. Stretch, good. Smoke a cigarette, bad. And as you can see, there's shower, brush your teeth, floss, and then it sort of identifies the bad ones and the good ones. I've marked this one up as someone who wants to become smarter, healthier, cleaner, and in better shape. And now you can start to introduce a system called habit stacking. So rather than waking up and checking your phone, you make it a habit that as soon as you wake up, you get straight out of bed and you make it, and then you go and brush your teeth before you even pick your phone up. Then to stack some more good habits on it, once you brush your teeth, you're going to get a shower and then you're going to floss. So then you've just stacked 5 good habits on top of each other then. And if you want to stack some more on there, when you come down for your morning coffee, you could fill the kettle up, flick it on, and then before it boils, I'm going to do as many press-ups as I can before I pour it into my cup. Habit stacking is also good for removing friction from your day. So let's say if your plan is to go to the gym after work, and usually you'd get back, you'd go into the kitchen and eat, and then you'd sit on your sofa, wait for your food to settle and then make a decision if you want to go to the gym. You could stack a habit on, right, as soon as I get home from work, I'm going to make a habit of getting changed straight into my gym gear. Then that's going to remove the friction of maybe bailing out on a gym session. So now you've got your bad habits dialed in. There may be many more on top of that. There could be scrolling, TikTok, porn, spitting, biting fingernails, swearing, vaping. The list could go on, but whatever it is, mark them down, put your plus, put your negatives, put your neutrals there, and start to identify and analyze the bad habits in your life. Which then brings us on to step 2, which is finding the cues and trigger points. And this is the first of 4 steps that can spark a habit. And there's many things that can be a cue or a trigger point. It can be time. So if you're a smoker, your time cues could be 7 a.m. as soon as you get in your car to work. It might be your first break, finishing a meal. And the one I can kind of resonate with the most is that first break at work. It might be like 10, 11 a.m. You've been working flat out. You've not been on your mobile phone. You've not been able to really talk to people, and that alarm goes off or your watch goes off for your first break, whatever, and everybody rushes to the smoking area. So do you. It's just a habit. Like, you like that little 2-minute nicotine break where you get to smoke a cig, chat to everyone, get a little bit of a buzz. I get it. And let's use breaks at work as another example for somebody who doesn't smoke. Scrolling on TikTok, like, you've just sat there for 3 hours at work, not been on your phone, bored stiff, getting grief off your managers. The only thing your brain wants right now is some dopamine. And the fastest way, it's 2024, the fastest way to get it is that mobile phone. So people just pull it out, scroll on TikTok for the 15, 20-minute break whilst eating crisps, eating chocolate. Boom, break time's over, back to the grind. It's sad. And you'll see it sometimes, usually with like the older generation. As soon as that break time hits, they'll pull a book out and they'll go and sit in the corner and they'll have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and they'll sit and read. The worst part about that is most people will look over it and read and be like, what a loser. But the worst part about that is most of those people saying that or thinking that will have goals to get smarter or to start a business. But because of that time being a cue and a habit, as soon as that break goes, unless they actually make the conscious decision, right, I need to stop scrolling, I need to stop smoking, I'm going to start reading, I'm going to start drinking water instead of smoking a cig. Until they make that decision, they will keep falling for that cue and that trigger at that time every single time. The next cue is location. So let's say if you walk into the communal kitchen at work and you see a batch of freshly baked cookies on the counter. Or let's say you've just walked into the kitchen at home and your partner's just stocked up the goodie drawer, or you've got 6 chilled beers in the fridge. Your brain knows that you keep things in the fridge that are good for survival. There's food, there's drink, even though beer's not exactly hydrating you, but your brain doesn't know that. It just thinks calories, survival, give me it, it tastes good, it makes me feel good, I'm having it. And you've built up this unconscious habit over time that you'll walk up to your fridge or your cupboard and you won't even think twice about eating this food. Like, sometimes you might be like, oh, I shouldn't really eat that, but you'll do it anyway. But most of the time you'll just open it and be like, I'll have that. Crazy. But again, location could be used to your advantage, but only if you're aware of it. So you could set a goal, right, every time I walk into the kitchen, I'm going to fill this cup up with water and I'm going to drink it. Or every time I walk into the gym, I want to grow my legs, so I'm going to go over to the squat rack first and I'm going to do 5 sets of squats before I do anything else. Instead of scrolling or smoking, use location to your advantage. And instead of being known as the smoker or the scroller at work, you get known as somebody who's disciplined and wants to better themselves. And I'm fully aware these habits don't sound so sexy right now. What fun is it going over to the water fountain whilst all your mates are outside smoking, filling your bottle up and sitting in the corner reading 10 pages? It doesn't sound good at all, I get that. But who cares? Unless you want to keep doing this and end up a 50-year-old, unhappy, unhealthy person who keeps doing these habits for the rest of their life, then you need to make a change. And the reason why you're in this bad habit loop is purely because you keep giving in to the irrational decision maker and you keep choosing instant rewards over long-term goals. But the reason you're watching this video now is because you've had enough of these bad habits making you feel like shit for so long. And you want to become somebody new who's got good habits and lives a better, happier, more disciplined life. And if that's you and you do want to be that person, you need to start acting right now, because identity change is one of the biggest parts of changing your habits, and we're going to talk about that a little bit further in this video. But for now, we're sticking on to cues, and the next one is events. A lot of habits are responses to something happening. So your phone pings, you pick it up and then you scroll for 20 minutes, or traffic builds up, you get stressed, you spark a cig up and you smoke it. Your favourite series comes on, you go to the fridge, you grab a beer and you sit and watch it. Events are not only the biggest of cues for most of us, but it can also be the easiest to change. So every time you have a morning coffee, you could meditate for 2 minutes, or every time your phone pings, you could do 10 press-ups. I know it's a bit David Goggins vibe, but every time your favourite series comes on, you can go and drink a pint of water, or every time you have your evening meal, you could say 10 things that you're grateful for. And just start small. Like every time I walk in the kitchen, I'll do 5 press-ups, something like that. I don't do that, by the way. I do 500. And 5 press-ups is not going to make a significant difference to your physical body. I get that. But what it does is it gets you into the routine of replacing the bad with the good, and it helps you build your identity as a disciplined person who's got an arsenal of good habits, and it actually makes you feel way more motivated. And most people can't actually stick to a habit for longer than 5 days. They don't see the results straight away, and that's why 90% of people just don't progress through life, which is a sad thing, which brings us on to the next cue, which is emotional state. Everybody loves junk food when they're sad. And this goes back to the mental patterns that our brain has built for us. So we get sad, we eat food, it makes us happy. We get stressed, so we smoke, and it makes us feel calm, or we drink and it makes us forget about the issue. And although the best thing that we can do is focus on whatever it is that's causing the issue so that we can get over it faster, our brain just wants instant feel good. So this is why we just get addicted to scrolling, smoking, watching porn, taking drugs. And that's just from years of bad conditioning. So what we need to do is recondition his brain. So you're stressed, do 5 minutes breath work. Or sad because of a breakup, go to the gym, improve yourself, get in better shape. You get bored, read a book, learn a new skill, go out in nature. You get angry, go meditate, focus on the good things that you've got in life. It's time to stop feeling sorry for yourself. People get dumped by the partners, right? And rather than going to the gym and getting healthy and in better shape, or going and earning more money so they can find themselves, in a way, a better partner, they'll just cement their ex's decision that they are a straight up loser. They'll go to the pub with the boys and just get off their head on drugs on a weekend, or they'll sit and watch Netflix and cry about it and order takeaways and get fat, therefore pushing themselves further away than finding another partner. And if you're watching this and that's you, you've just been dumped by your partner, get yourself to the Asda, go into a healthy food shop and go buy a gym membership and start making loads of money. The final cue is people, and this one doesn't really need explaining. Jim Rohn said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you hang around with 5 smokers, you become the 6th. And I'm not saying befriend your friends that have got bad habits, but avoid being with the people in the environment where their bad habits take place. So if your friends like to go to the pub to have a drink and then take drugs, avoid going to the pub with them. If your friends like to smoke weed in the house, see them out of the house. If your friends like to take drugs on a weekend, see them during the week. And if you're aged between 15 and 22, the best advice I can give you right now is that the people you're friends with now don't have to be your friends for the rest of your life. Find 5 best friends who are on the same shit as you. People that bring value to your life. And with internet and social media right now, there is no easier way to connect with people who are doing the things that you want to do. Hang around with 5 millionaires and you will become the 6th. Which brings us on to the next step, which is think long term. The instant gratification monkey inside our brains does not think about the past or the future or what's best for us. Prefrontal cortex is the thinking part of our brain, and it thinks rationally. It thinks about consequences and long term, but for most of us, the prefrontal cortex gets overruled by this monkey. I became a slave to it for about 6 years. I craved weed, I smoked it. I wanted a McDonald's, I got it. I got bored, I watched porn. I got FOMO, I went out drinking. I failed to realize that every time I gave into those cues, I was pushing myself further and further away from who I wanted to be. The moment I turned my life around, it wasn't like a gradual thing. It was like a moment of realization where I just thought, boom, who am I going to become if I keep doing the things I'm doing right now, which caused some sort of desperation for me. I was sick of living that same 7-day life cycle, which was working Monday to Friday, watching porn pretty much every day, smoking weed most nights, and partying on a weekend. And I'd basically just had enough. I realized that my life was not progressing, or had not progressed at all in the last 5 or 6 years. I was doing the same shit every single week and expecting change, and it wasn't going to happen. I had to think long term. So step 4 is think about who you want to become. From joining the military in 2012 till about 2021, I had no idea at all who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, or who I wanted to become, which was probably the main reason why I let my bad habits control my life. And I started to think about it this way. Let's say if I wanted to be an online fitness coach, then binge drinking and going out on a weekend and eating bad food wouldn't have aligned with who I wanted to become. If I wanted to start a business, then going out on a weekend drinking or spending an hour a night watching porn would have just took time away from me building a business, so I wouldn't have done it. Which is why I said earlier that you can't label habits as good or bad. You can, but if my goal is to be something, then anything that directs me away from that, I would class as bad. Some people might not class that habit as bad if that's not their goal or dream. And in 2023, I kind of figured out who I wanted to become or what I wanted to do. So I'd spend most evenings for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, kind of meditating and envisioning the person I wanted to become and the life that I wanted to live. But I didn't focus too much on the steps that I needed to take to get there. And I was focused more on the outcome or the goal rather than the little details and the habits that were going to get me there. I had to take a good hard look at myself and kind of paint a picture of who I wanted to become as a person. And for me, that person had to be somebody who's healthy, in shape, with high energy, who had time and freedom to be a good father, which I will become in about 8 weeks' time. I needed to have a good business, which I could do every single day and still enjoy it, but also have the time and the flexibility to see my child every day and watch him grow up. None of that would have been possible if I'd have continued with the bad habits. And the final step of this video is to identify as the person you want to become and base everything you do and every decision that you make on that person, as if you are already that person. Would the best version of me eat this junk food? And don't just think that question, actually ask yourself that question, like say it out loud, like before you eat a cookie, I'm about to eat this cookie, even though it's going to fill my body with fats and sugars, it's going to make me unhealthy. Should I really do it? Do I really want to be the person who eats the cookie? And hearing your habits spoken out loud like that, it makes the consequences feel more real. So actually try that and make a promise to yourself that the decisions that you make will be based on if the best version of you would do it. And see how good it actually feels to be in control of your own actions. The feeling will outweigh smoking a cig, watching porn. And if you're not willing to do the things that the highest version of you would do, how do you ever expect to become that person? You're not just going to wake up one day and be like, oh my God, I'm super motivated, I'm disciplined, I'm the person I've always dreamed of being, it's miraculously happened. That person has to be created by your 1% improvements every single day for the next 6 to 12 months. And every time you drop a bad habit and create a good one, and then stack another good one on top of it, you'll slowly start to become the person who's disciplined and motivated. And if we're talking about identifying as a person, let's say if you want to stop smoking and someone says, do you want a cig? Rather than saying, no thanks, I'm trying to stop, try, no thanks, I don't smoke. Because if you identify as no thanks, I don't smoke, someone who doesn't smoke, you're already identifying as someone who doesn't smoke. If you say, no thanks, I'm trying to stop, you identify as someone who does still smoke, but they're trying to stop. Same with drinking. Do you want to come to the pub? No thanks, mate, I don't drink. Instead of, oh, I'm trying to stop drinking. You know what I mean? Don't identify as someone who is trying to stop. Identify as that person who doesn't do that anymore. Whoever you want to become, identify as that person from day one. Just to recap the 5 steps, it's acknowledge the habit, finding the cues and trigger points, thinking long term, who do you want to become, and identify as that person. Small but harmful habits are preventing you from becoming the person who you want to become. And if I can ask you to take anything away from this video, it's this. Your habits will determine who you will become. And finally, next time you try and tell yourself that it's hard to stop a bad habit or it's hard to create a new one, stop being a bitch. I hope you got some value out of this video, and I hope you become the habit machine you've always dreamed of being. If you would like some more weekly advice or tips on how to live a better life, feel free to sign up to my free newsletter, which is in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.